Hello and welcome to the SMEFocus show powered by MTDCNC. I'm Mark Weymouth from the Sensor Specialist Plus Automation. I'm your host this week to highlight aspects of UK manufacturing and in particular topics of interest to SMEs. My guest today is Stephen Morley, President of the Confederation of British Metalforming, or the CBM. It's a group that represents 70,000 employees and a turnover of £27 billion for its members. The CBM is a group I'm pleased to be part of and support, particularly because of the lobbying they do of the government on issues like energy, costs, tax, duties, tariffs, skills and training. Steve's also been a vocal supporter of Andrew Wilson's campaign for a champion to government for UK manufacturing. Actually, Andrew will be a guest on next week. I should also say, in a spirit of transparency for some viewers who are easily offended, Steve is a director of Aston Villa Supporters Trust, and a role much less likely to cause any discord. He's also commercial director of Warmley Golf Club. Hi, Steve. Welcome to SMEFocus.
Hi, Mark. Good to see you again.
Great. Thanks for being a guest.
You're welcome.
So, I guess a lot of people will know you and know that you've got a very long history and a very long, well-established love of UK manufacturing. Can I kick off by quickly asking you to try and recap in a few words, if you could, 22 years at Certec, where you became the Group Engineering Director. So how would you summarise 2 decades at a large automotive Tier 1 manufacturer?
It's one hell of a journey, that's for sure. I actually started as a toolmaker. When I left school, I actually thought a toolmaker was someone who made hammers and chisels. So that shows what I knew about press tooling. But having spent a number of years in manufacturing of tooling and also getting into manufacturing, Certec approached me a couple of times, actually, about 2 or 3 times, actually, and eventually I made the move there as a manager. And after a fair number of years, I became a director. I think I came as director. I think the turnover was 45 million. When I left, it was 250 million. So that was one hell of a journey, one I'm very proud to be part of. Yeah, and it's all there. We had a good team, worked well together, and it was a good experience. I'm not sure you get the same experience now. I think business is different. But we did things in our way, and it worked. And it was a good education.
Brilliant. I can imagine it was. It's an amazing industry to be involved with, and the figures you're talking about are just colossal. Total difference from the business you joined to the business you left, so to speak. So exciting times and a hell of a lot of challenges along the way.
Just a bit. Yeah, there was a couple of 2008 in particular was the big challenge, I think, and that was difficult. I had to let my number 2 go, who had ran through brick walls for me, and that was probably the most difficult decision I've made in my working life, and it lived me for a long time. And he was obviously quite rightly. But he agreed with me personally, and I've met him since. He's a great guy, but that was so tough, hard for very difficult decision. And when you make anyone redundant, it was difficult. And we that time in 2008 was a very difficult period, and you don't really get to grips with what it does to you emotionally. But you've got to do what you got to do at the time, what you think's right for the business.
Yeah, I think it's funny how over time maybe we forget how suddenly the 2008 crisis came on and how deep it was. It was very much a bang out the blue that really scuppered everybody for a long time.
It certainly did.
Okay. Before we get on to talking about the CBM, maybe a couple of other areas of your life where there have been ups and downs. So I mentioned that you've got non-exec roles at Warmley Golf Club and Aston Villa Supporters Trust. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's clearly a very different aspect of life and a passion that I'm sure lots of people share in different flavours and different clubs.
Yeah, I think the Warmley one is quite interesting. I just felt that the old chairman needed some help and some support, and I kind of threw my hat in the ring as a kind of not actually as a board member, seconded just to help him out. And I think the golf club, most golf clubs actually are going through difficult periods. So I think it was just using my experience to help the golf club and the members. It's a very diverse membership, and it's interesting, some of the issues that come your way. We've certainly got some challenges at the moment. And there's always appointments, there's always someone not happy. So it's very different from being part of a business, actually. But you just use your experience to get through different things. I mean, commercial is probably not my strongest suit, if I'm honest, but it mainly thrives around promoting the club and getting new members in, really, which we've been very successful at recently. So that's been positive. And then the supporters trust, I suppose, everyone knows me, knows that's a big part of my life and always has been. And again, I felt that there was a role to play. I was approached by a journalist called Johnny Gould, actually, to come on the trust. And as I joined, he left for personal reasons. I just don't go into on this. But I decided to go for it. And again, we changed chairman, and the new chairman is a bit more dynamic than the old one. And we are challenging the club to try and get the best deal for the fans. And it's very interesting because some fans support the present regime in terms of, I'm not talking about the owners who are doing a fantastic job and investing. I'm talking about the guys who actually run the business side of the club, who are testing fans' loyalty by moving them around the ground, about telling them a number of things they've done which have been unpalatable. I mean, the owners might say they're getting results, and some other fans have spoke against me, on LinkedIn saying, well, they're doing a good job. Well, there's ways of doing it. The loyalty of fans is being tested by every single club across the country, really. And I think I don't want Aston Villa to be following other clubs. I want it to be a leader and try and do something different to look after its fans. Why being so successful as we are at the moment?
Yeah. Okay. The two things shouldn't be. The two aspects should be objectives of a good club, shouldn't they? Keeping the loyalty, looking after the fans, getting the results.
It's easy, Mark, but there's a lack of empathy sometimes when dealing with the loyalty of fans, and I just don't believe in injustices, and I think that's why I fight. I'm not. I think it's something you could ignore, not get involved with, but if you're passionate about something, you want to just try and help where you can. Yeah.
Okay. So, an interesting diversion, but obviously a lot of people will also know you for your role as president of the Confederation British Metalforming, and you've been there for nearly 7 years. So I guess that's what a lot of people tuned into. We will return to Aston Villa later, don't worry. But 7 years at the CBM. So can we kick off? Can you tell us what the CBM is for people who don't know, and go into what the aims are of the Confederation, please?
Yeah, so I was actually a director of CBM before I became president. I was vice president, I left Certec and then became president. And CBM are a trade association. I think on my 2010, we represent British metalforming companies, and that predominantly covers sheet metal, so press workers, forgers, as in forging companies, fasteners, and cold roll section. And more recently, we've kind of diversified into JLR now, a member, which was a big thing for us, really. I've got a long association with JLR going back over 40 years, and I was really keen to embrace it then, because a lot of our members are linked to the automotive sector and to JLR in particular.
Yeah, of course.
The West Midlands has got a strong foothold with JLR, and I thought there was an opportunity there to help JLR communicate not to tier 1, which they're good at, but to tier 2, tier 3 and tier 4, which I thought there was a gap in the marketplace, because I don't think that communication after Tier 1 has been brilliant, and I think it's something we can help them with, and that's what we plan to do really. And we're trying to move that relationship along. It's fantastic. They sponsored one of the awards and attended our dinner recently, which is brilliant. So that's a positive step in the right direction. I think sustainability is a big area that we're pushing JLR and our members to work together on that journey. So we're trying to do the Members' Day in May on that particular subject. But the CBM are, we actually represent 85% SMEs, and that's why we're quite passionate about the SME manufacturing, as you're aware of, Mark. And we kind of, I think we've evolved really in the last 7 or 8 years, because lobbying probably wasn't one of our strongest attributes. We're very good at skills training, and our USP was energy, which it still is. Energy is probably one of our strongest areas. But the lobby kind of evolved from meetings me and Geraldine, our CEO, were attending, and then just became mushroomed, really became bigger. And then with COVID coming along, we found ourselves in the middle of a storm, which everyone was facing, but we really came to the fore, I thought we handled it very well, supporting the members well. Information was frequent and informative, and in some occasions we were better informed than some of the bigger lobby groups, and that's a fact. It's not just me saying it. We had better intel and better understanding of some of the new government schemes. We excelled on trade credit insurance, where people I spoke to at certain lobby groups didn't even know what it was. And we worked with the CBI in particular, the financial director there, who was excellent, and the ABI, providing case studies into them for the government scheme that supported the insurance companies to make sure trade credit insurance kept in place. But we also had weekly meetings that became twice weekly meetings, and we had a number of CEOs and managers join that, and just informing them about what was happening with COVID. We had one member at Gestamp who went back to work very early, and they provided us with a booklet they did for their members so we could share it across all our members. So what they learned with their workforce, we were allowed to share across the membership, which was absolutely fantastic. And bear in mind, the shutdown was in March, and then we're back in April. That was like 2 or 3 weeks, into it, which is probably unheard of. And we just did that for probably the whole of COVID, really. And then we carried on with the meetings for probably went back to 1 a week, but we continued them. And it's something we'll look at bringing back. I think it kind of ran its course, but I think it's something we need to probably look at bringing back. We do sector meetings for forges and fasteners, but I think we need to start looking at it for the wider scope, especially with everything going on at the moment. So the CBM, we've got a diverse membership. We manage climate change agreements. We save our members over £4 million a year on levies. Amazingly, we speak to people who can get savings and still don't come into the scheme, which always baffles me. But we work hard on that, and we lobby hard on that in terms of energy costs, which has been more prevalent of late because of what's happening with British Steel, but energy costs are probably one of the biggest burdens of manufacturing. And to be frank, we don't get very far in our lobbying because it's just a blank answer, very frustrating. And then what makes it worse is some of the levies we pay actually go to support high intensity use like UK steel manufacturers or cement or areas. So that's frustrating as well. So I think there's a clear lack of understanding and energy in business. Probably certainly before the Ukraine war, there was a lack of understanding of it. I certainly learned a lot. I started lobbying on energy probably in October, 2021, so probably 4 or 5 months before the war came about, so I could see the trend it was going. And you know, some people in the call might not know that 65% of your bill is not the actual energy. It's 35% of your bill's actually energy cost. 65 are made of the costs. And when I was on the Andy Street's energy team, we found out there was 16 or 17 layers from the energy coming out of the ground, whether the oil or gas or whatever, to actually get to the supplier. And that is something that should be tackled. And things like brokers being one of the biggest issues in terms of some of the things they do and how they sell contracts. And I don't think any government, I'm not just criticising this one, any government has got to grips with that. Our energy costs have been quite well vocalised in the media of late. We've got the highest cost in the G7, 50% more than Germany. We can't compete in the UK on them terms. And it's not a one government problem, it's a whole government problem. It's a whole piece of work that needs to be done. And it's not just about, windfall taxes. It's about getting back to the nuts and bolts and the root and branch, look into it to see what we can do to stop companies being ripped off by energy companies.
Do you think the focus within the political minds of British Steel will actually cause more of a concentration on the cost of electricity, and whether that's regional electricity or the price setting mechanism using gas? Or do you think it's just such a big thing they'll try and avoid it?
No, I don't think they can avoid it, really. I worry on two fronts on that. One, have they got the gumption for a fight to take the energy companies on? Because I think it's inbred into the system. And that's a big one for any government to take on, but they should be taking it on and understanding, fundamentally rather than go for the windfall tax at the end, let's stop them getting to that point when they've got this much tax or that there has to be windfall from. And then I worry about the system, and I've challenged this with governments, and I've lobbied against it, where we can support high intensity users by taxing non-domestic users. So all the small businesses are paying levies that go to support UK steel companies or ceramics, and that's got to be wrong, and it's fundamentally wrong. And proportionally, yes, we know that UK steel companies, British Steel or whoever they're talking about, use a lot of energy. Understand that, and so the ceramic companies, cement companies, totally understand that. But proportionally, manufacturers, especially with some of the processes we've got, especially in forging, in a lot of press work now, they're using hot pressings. We are high energy use proportionally, and yet we're being penalised. And to me, that's just wrong. And it frustrates the life out of me that we've got the situation where, we're not helping any business is not being helped. The business that are being helped in the high intensity users are being helped by other businesses, which is just wrong.
Yeah.
And there's a whole big piece then on if you get into nuclear or wind or whatever. I think we've failed on every front, to be honest. I think we just as structure, infrastructure in this country is just diabolical, and the way we handle it is diabolical. And that is just, I find it farcical that a lot of other countries can do things better than we can, and with our history, that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, it's amazing if you compare, the EV charging infrastructure versus it's 200th anniversary of rail coming up. So you think of the UK leading the world in infrastructure 200 years ago, and now trailing behind goodness knows what countries on EV infrastructure, mobile phone communication, goodness knows what. So
I think it's most of them.
Change needed. Okay, are there any particularly great highlights that have come out of the lobbying work you've done, or any amusing moments of confusion or when you've spoken to politicians, anything else you can tell us about the lobbying activities you've had?
I think there's been, so we choose our battles. I mean, we are a small organisation in terms of, we're not going to compete with the B5 in terms of some of the things we lobby at. So we pick our battles. We can't fight them all. So aside from not the apprenticeship levy, which is very important, we'll leave that to the other organisations to work on. And we try and focus on things that impact on our members' bottom line. So energy being one of them, which is, I've already mentioned, has been a very frustrating path for us. But we still keep banging the drum on it. Still, safeguarding was one that kind of came very quickly, almost from nowhere, really, because as part of the trade credit agreements when we left the EU, we carried over some of the safeguarding from the EU, and then we had members who were previously had imported from the EU were finding themselves paying tariffs when certain quotas were exhausted, and that was hitting big numbers. Probably only 7 of our members were impacted, but the numbers were into hundreds of thousands of pounds. And it took us probably 18 months. I met with 3 Secretary of States, which was all different meetings. Liz Truss was online, and that was probably a bit of a baptism of fire for me against a number of steel companies. It was like David with Goliath, but my sling wasn't working. And I got a bit of a hammering, really, in terms of... I got my point across. It wasn't that really, but they were up against a well-oiled machine that were very machine gun firing at me, and it was a bit of a tough call. But we persevered. Liz Truss became the first minister to rule against the TRA on a particular category that we're concerned with, which was disappointing. We then faced up with Kemi Badenoch, who, in fairness to her, listened and certainly had some very good meetings with her special advisor. And then that moved to our military rebellion. After a number of full starts, we had an agreement in place which didn't work because HMRC intervened. And then we eventually got an agreement where the quota was extended, working actually with UK Steel, which was good. And Military Rebellion extended the quota. And to date, that quota has been sufficient, although we still believe that the category involved should be taken out because it's not actually made in the UK anymore. It hasn't been for a number of years, but we've still got safeguarding against it, which shows how ridiculous it all is, really. So that was probably a big win. I thought that the trade credit insurance that all members was a big win. Really, really worked hard on both of them. Funny moments. I don't think lobbying's funny. I think it's difficult. I think it's frustrating. I do recall going to a meeting in London with 2 or 3 other organisations with a couple of Conservative ministers, and on the way down on the train, I was having a LinkedIn conversation with another minister who had said to me this particular MP was now a Minister for Manufacturing. I didn't know this particular MP mentioned was going to be in the meeting, but his title wasn't Minister for Manufacturing at all. It was something convoluted and something else completely different. And then after 10 minutes of the meeting, he was obviously bored. He was looking at his watch. He wanted to go. He wasn't listening to what people were saying. So I was a bit, I can't use the word here, but say aggrieved. And I pulled him after the meeting. You're supposed to be Minister of Manufacturing, but you weren't even listening. He said, I am a Minister of Manufacturing. Well, why aren't you listening? And he didn't have to say to me. Unfortunately, he's still an MP, although he's not in government anymore. But that was probably one of the most annoying and frustrating things that I've come across. I say not many funny moments at all, really. Very proud that I've been in House of Parliament in the last couple of years, last year, really. That was a nice to have, nice to do. And I think that the fact we've got a Labour MP in West Bromwich in our constituency now who is fighting for manufacturing, Sarah Coombs. She's been out visiting our members and other people in the constituency and fighting our corner in Parliament. She's already asked 2 questions on our behalf and mentioned Confederation Metalforming in one of her speeches. And it's good to see progressive MP, young MP who's doing really well and listens to what we're going to say. And I think, in our role as lobbyists, we have to be apolitical. We can't, whatever our personal views are, we've got to be apolitical and we've got to take people as we find them. And that's really good, actually, because you see good on both sides, and that's what I found. And I speak, you know me quite well. I speak as I find. And I think they are, they're all good on both sides. And I've been, some genuinely good people out there who are MPs trying to do good jobs. So it's not all doom and gloom, but unfortunately, there's these things called civil servants, and they are, again, some are very good and some aren't so good. And it's frustrating some of the things you have to deal with to get your message across, and that's why you have to work so hard at it and keep pushing all the time. Okay,
so your insight and knowledge of the industry and some of the politics involved in it is obviously a lot better than mine, a lot better than most of the viewers. So can I ask you, maybe a very difficult question to give a brief overview, but can you give us your perspective on the British Steel situation? Obviously, it's very much in the news. Maybe outline some of the issues as you see them regarding British Steel.
Yeah, so this is a really probably interesting subject for us because we support British Steel. We support. We work with UK Steel Lobbying Group. We also work against them, which is a quite interesting combination. We get on really well. Gareth Stacey, who runs it, Director General, and Frank and Chrissy, the main team. But then our goals are always aligned. So as a whole, our members would like to use UK steel products. So whether it be British Steel or Tata, whoever, we would like to buy British Steel products. But as you may know, and some of the viewers will know, that's not always possible. Some of the steels are not made in the UK because they can't make them or because they don't want to make them. Some of the steels they make are not competitive. They either want to have a full billet made, which means you're going to buy more than you need. So there's all these commercial and manufacturing issues where all our members can't buy UK steel. So we therefore end up having to import. And this is where the problem comes, because some of the restrictions that UK steel lobby for harm our members. And that could be on safeguarding, on quotas as part of that, or on the CBAM, which is coming in, coming into the EU, but also coming into the UK. So a lot of things we have to lobby on, which don't align with that. In saying that, in terms of British Steel itself, I don't think the government had a choice. I think, I know, and some well-respected people I know, and some journalists I read have kind of said it's not the right thing to do. Me personally, being a manufacturing guy, I think we have to have our own steel in the UK. We have to support key areas, and not just defence, it's other areas as well, infrastructure. And I think the argument that it loses money, well, let's go back to the energy question. Sort energy costs down. And then that's the first hurdle of making that right. I know the arguments about green. I've just wrote a piece on about for the media about deindustrialisation, which has been something that's been a bugbear of mine for a couple of months now. I think it's been more in the media recently, but I wrote this piece probably before it hit the media about we're rushing headlong to net zero, but we're not having any industry if we're not careful. And I think we have to think about how we get to net zero without losing our manufacturing or putting that much emphasis on it too quickly that the burden is too much for manufacturing. I think that's what's happened with probably Tata and British Steel, but also in a smaller way on other companies. And I think we need to look at how we map our way to net zero that works for everybody, not just headlong into it. And I also think that the government have a very difficult road ahead of them. This was not an easy decision, although I support it. They've got a lot of work to do to make it work.
Yeah, definitely wouldn't envy them the choice that they made. I admire them for making a choice and not just sitting back and letting things collapse around them. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be easy, no matter what.
I did a media piece actually last Saturday at the date it was announced, and I've got to say one of the things that I particularly loved was we had the whole of Parliament sitting on a Saturday, and they were talking about manufacturing. I know it's predominantly about steel, but they're talking about manufacturing, and that's not happened enough. That all of a sudden there's a light bulb moment. Manufacturing is important, and I think you, me, Andrea, other people who lobby for manufacturing understand its importance to the economy. It's not just people in jobs in manufacturing, 2.6 million people. It's what we do. Where do we spend our money? We spend our money in the economy, spend our money in shops, spend our money in restaurants, cinemas, going to football games. And if you haven't got no jobs in manufacturing, we're going to have a big problem in this country. And I think this is where it's so important.
Yeah. Okay. Another thing I'll pick your brains on as somebody who's far better educated on these things than I am. It's obviously topical at the minute to talk about tariffs and Trump imposing tariffs, but particularly the tariffs on steel and aluminium don't seem to be getting much coverage, but have a massive impact on people. So maybe can I ask you some thoughts on tariffs issues and particularly tariffs on metals?
It's a very, very complex subject. And I think we represent also another company called Business Aluminium. We manufacture aluminium, as it says in the tin almost, and they're particularly worried about CBAM and tariffs. But I think everyone has been impacted now by the latest ones. I think we've been dealing with tariffs on the steel safeguard, as I mentioned earlier. But these particular tariffs go a lot further. I think the impact on steel and aluminium for those who import, I mean, the figures are really quite small in terms of what we export to the USA in terms of percentages to the USA. But for the companies that UK Steel represent, it's a big number. So it's really important to them that we get this sorted out. I think it's not very widely reported for probably different reasons to suit people's agendas, but the actual steel companies in America have all put their prices up because they are exploiting the situation. So a lot of metalforming companies similar to what we represent in the US are suffering from high steel prices, not being able to get steel. So there's a big impact on American manufacturers as well, which isn't widely reported in the UK, but it's causing them some problems. And I've seen some of the price increases they faced, and they're astronomical. So there is a double whammy, if you like, for the Americans, because not only if they buy our steel, will they have to pay a tariffs, they've also got the situation where their own steel's gone up. But I think I've always said from day one the government is in a strong position because you look at the trade surpluses, they are level. And I've said this even before he went at his garden party and that sort of tariffs, that we were in a strong position. We should hold our nerve and negotiate a deal, and I think that's what we're doing. I criticise this government for a lot of things, but I think on this occasion they are trying to do the right thing, and I think we've just got to wait and see how that works itself out, really. I think it's not an easy subject. I think there was a bit of an ego trip by Donald Trump, without doubt, but we're going to make it the right way, and I've always said we're in a good position, and I stick by that.
after probably the most understated comment I've ever heard come from you, Steve, of describing a bit of an ego trip from Donald Trump, I'm going to ask you to talk about something you'll have far bigger superlatives about. Can you tell us about your love of Aston Villa? How did it start? Obviously, you've seen them through some lows and particularly recently some great highs. So tell us about your passion for Aston Villa.
Yeah, so I first went down to Aston Villa in 1968. I think I was 6 or 7 years old at the time. So it's going back a long, long way. And we had a few games. I think we were then relegated to Division 3. I then started watching the youth team in the 1970-71. We actually won the Youth Cup with one of my favourite Villa players, Brian, in the team. Obviously, as a youngster, another guy called John Gibbon, one of my favourites from very early days. My father wasn't actually a Villa fan. He was a bit of a non-football. He liked football, but never really followed it. My uncle's a Villa fan. But I had one of the neighbours take me to the game, so consequently, I kind of didn't really start going to about 1974 on my own with my mate, and then in 1976 I had a season ticket, and I've had one ever since. So quite a long association. I suppose it gets into your blood. I mean, and my dad used to say, "They won't come and see you if you're sick." Well, as I was going when I was poorly, things like that. I've had the same with my wife and my kids, and it's just in there. All my kids had season tickets. It was a great time. I was very lucky. I was very lucky when we won the league in 1981. I went to every game home and away, and then was fortunate to be in Rotterdam in 1982, won the European Cup. And we've had some. We haven't won that many trophies. I mean, 96 was the last trophy we won. 94 was a great final with Man United against the odds. 96 we beat Leeds, and we've been to a few finals since then. Had a good couple of teams under David O'Leary, Martin O'Neill, and now it's just a different ball game altogether. What you and I, Emily's done. I didn't got to see this again. The level we're playing at, the squad we've got now is just phenomenal. The football we're playing is breathtaking. We've just played Newcastle, a game I thought would be tough, and it could have been 6 or 7-1. So the level we've got to play PSG last week, as probably some people would have seen. It was a great game of football. Okay, we went out, but it was just tremendous.
Fantastic. I think I could probably describe you as a bit of a fanboy for Birmingham, but obviously I mean Birmingham the city rather than Birmingham football. If you were to pitch Birmingham to somebody, what would you say? Yeah,
so I had to. We did a host of the Euroforge event. So CBM as an organisation, a member of a number of international organisations, and one representing the forging companies called Euroforge, and we hosted an event there only 2 weeks ago in Birmingham, and I had to describe Birmingham and some of its attributes. And when I said that we got more canals than Venice, they didn't believe me. Got more trees than Paris, biggest urban park in Europe. There's a few things I didn't kind of believe, but I've got to say, I was, they absolutely loved the city. I mean, thankfully the sun was shining. We organised a tour with the legendary Carl Chin around the canals and the famous gas basin, and the history was flowing, and they absolutely loved the visit. So I was quite proud, actually. I suppose that's, why I really wanted to touch on it today, really. I mean, I do get frustrated. I think the airport is shocking, and that frustrates me as a proud Brummie. And I've got a lot of business people who say the same to me, a lot of people who go away. The new design hasn't worked. I did a post last year on LinkedIn that had 16,000 views, and everyone agreed with me. I travel quite exclusively around the world. I'm very lucky in terms of football and work, and I've got a nickname for Judith Chalmers, which is probably not the most flashy nickname I've had. But you know, traveling around the world, it's the worst airport I go to, and that as a Brummie really hurts me to say. So things like that need addressing. I mean, I copied the CEO into my LinkedIn post, didn't answer. Copied the new mailing, didn't answer. You know, that I've got a lot to answer for, and every time I've been there, even last time I went, which is probably my best experience, I got for security gate, boarding card gate straight away. Went to security, and there's only 2 open, and the queue was 45 minutes. We could have walked straight through if they opened 2 more. Still being checked, and this is the mindset of what they've got. Now, you know, it's just totally wrong, and the people skills leave a lot to be desired. I'll give an example of Dusseldorf Airport, which I went through 2 or 3 times going to the Euros. Obviously, big event last year. It's the 7th biggest city in Germany. Their population is probably half of Greater Birmingham. I've never been there and queued. You know, I've queued 1 minute for security, or 2 minutes at most. And I've been for that airport 3 times last year, and previously I've never queued. And it just shows you that, you know, the limit we've got to go to improve that. And it's not just that. I think, you know, it's a shame we've got a situation with the big strike at the moment, because, you know, the harm that's done to our city in terms of reputational harm is shocking. I'm not saying I don't support. I'm not going into the ins and outs of the case itself. I mean, everyone's got a right to fight for their jobs and get the role, but the actual harm it's done to our city in terms of reputation should not be allowed to happen. And that has not been managed well by the mayor or the council, who have both been weak on the subject, in my opinion. And you know, we've got to protect our city and its name.
Indeed. Well, I'm going to try and wrap things up with the question that I always use, and you have been forewarned. So can you tell me what your plans and hopes are for the next 12 months? And that can be business related, personal, whichever you prefer. So what are you hoping to achieve, or what do you want to do in the next 12 months?
I think, you know, a kind of business wise, we've just got to keep pushing and get stronger. I think the demands on, I always say with trade association, if I'm running a business, I look at my accounts and say, where can I save some money? Because all the problems we're getting with energy costs and the new budget, which we haven't really touched on today, which is farcical what I've done to business when I've got elected on growth. And look at that line and saying, well, what does this trade association do for me? I don't want any of our members saying to us, we can't afford you anymore. We want to be kind of invaluable to our members. And that work ethic is still there with me and Geraldine and the team. It's part of the reason why we've embraced this commercial. So we've got NatWest now as a member. We've got Kaizen Institute, a global organisation, a member, and Armstrong Bellatune Communications Company as a member, because we want to be giving members opportunities where they can save money and grow their businesses. So, you know, and we see these as avenues where we can give some cost advantage to our members, as well as the stuff we do in energy and training and lobbying. And we're trying to kind of grow the brand, if you like, in terms of making us more attractive, but also giving value. I don't want anyone saying that we don't give value for money. And I recognise that people will look at that and say, you know, are they giving us value? And that's what we want to give. So I think our journey really is to improve what we're doing. We're looking at how we can improve the lobbying, improving that team, but also all the other aspects in training, skills, energy, and improving that. And, you know, we've got a good team and we just want to keep pushing that, really. I suppose in personal life, you know, I do enjoy what I'm doing. So in terms of work-wise, so I need to get healthier. I want to keep doing it. You know, I don't want to, you know, I'm at an age where we all get ailments and I want to try and get healthier, lose some weight, you know, and just be fit to do what I enjoy, which is, you know, the work side of it, personal life, me partner, and so obviously playing golf, supporting the villa. You know, you've got to have your health. Health's your wealth, and I think that's what, you know, I want to focus on really, and getting that right.
Okay, brilliant. So
And
can you tell people?
Sorry, Mark. And win the FA Cup this year.
Okay, excellent. So can I ask, how can you tell people how they go about finding the CBM, and how do they reach out and contact yourself?
Well, I'm pretty, as you know, on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn, Stephen Morley, CBM President, is pretty prominent there. If anyone wants to contact me, and you can look at CBM on their website, www.cbm.co, and the team will answer any of your questions if you get hold of me or the team for the website.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for being on, Steve. We'll wrap up by the usual invitation to people if they'd like to get in touch with the show with a comment, a suggestion, or in particular if they'd like to appear in a future episode. Please email us at inquiries@mtdcnc.com or contact myself, Stuart Whitehead, or Joe Reynolds. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend from me, Mark Weymouth, Plus Automation. Cheers. Have fun.